Kicking things off, I've got Cleveland way there in the distance. I'm on the lakeshore. Gonna try to follow the lakeshore bikeway. My brother just dropped me off at Edgewater Park. Got the Cleveland script sign picture, and gonna give it a go. At the Tremont script sign, so I know I'm gonna at least hit two. I got the Edgewater Park script sign, and here's the one in Tremont. I'm recording this on the GoPro. I took kind of a calculated risk not bringing a charger for my phone. I figured that I would certainly be all right. And navigating the lakefront bikeway, lakeshore bikeway, maybe they call it, was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. The signage was pretty good, despite its reputation. The detour I had to take though after that, so like Franklin Avenue, if you look at the Ohio to Erie Trail interactive map, I think is supposed to be where you hop back on to the the Ohio to Erie Trail, the more official route. But that is a detour right now too, and I got a little mixed up around Lorraine and 25th, trying to weave my way over to Abbey. So I had to reference my GPS a lot more than I hoped I would. I'm still not using active navigation. I'm trying to like just look at a map and find my point in space. Lakeshore Bikeway, like I say, I did better than I thought I would. I don't have like a perfect command of the city, but like I don't know where I am in relation to other things. Anyway, regardless. So yep, I'm getting by. Gonna try to get out of the city here, and I'll feel a little better once I get out of this craziness. I'm at Sokolowski's. I'm gonna stick with that pronunciation. So Sokolowski's Overlook. It's not the most picturesque thing out there, but it is kind of a cool vantage point you've got. You've got like the Lakeshore Trail, and then I think winding back up toward the beach. And you've got the river bends here. My boy will get a real kick out of, I think it's kind of hard to see from here, but there are excavators, big front loaders down there, articulating front loaders working at the mine. Looks like there's an Amtrak or maybe even like a trolley across the river. For everything negative we can say about technology, I will say God bless the modern age, because if I had not been able to like Google Street View follow along this route earlier, I would have much less of a clue where I am. But as it stands, you know, I've sort of laid eyes on it, not first person or first hand, but well enough to have an idea of where I am and where I'm trying to head. So that helps. I also laid out a path that when my brother drove me up here this morning, we followed along, trying to get as close to as many trail street intersections as we could. So I had some point of reference, and I feel like it's helped. I think I can safely say I'm out of the city now, or you know, enough out of the city that I can count myself as out of the city. It lived up to its reputation as being a little tricky to navigate. The signage, basically, after I lost the lakefront bikeway or lakeshore bikeway, I don't know why I can't remember what it's called, the signage pretty much evaporated. I mean, there were a few signs at street crossings, and then I haven't seen anything in quite some time to indicate that I'm on the right path. And Ohio, blessing and curse, has a ton of different trails and walking paths, and it's a little bit nerving to consider whether or not you're actually on the right one, but just referenced my GPS and I appear to be on track. So my average, I've only made it 5 miles in 30 minutes. So I mean, 30 minutes of active time, but actually like I left like 45, 50 minutes ago. So not terrible, it could be better. I guess I'm gonna get down into like more of my home turf here soon. If I see anything really, really cool, I'll stop and snag a little snippet. It never fails. I thought I had a pretty cool video opportunity here. It was like a nice quiet spot in the trail. And it's just like when you start to go up a hill or around a blind curve on a bike, that's when someone comes up behind you and you're holding them up. So just like I finally found a nice quiet shaded spot, really neat little trestle here. And of course, that's when a train goes overhead, a really long industrial, I'm going to guess like departing from Cleveland kind of train. So when I said I was out of the city earlier, it was not the first time I was wrong, will not be the last. I failed to account for urban sprawl. And I was definitely not really out of the city. I was out of like Cleveland proper, but I was still dealing with the residual effect of a city around, or the territory surrounding a city. So I got turned around like once, I think they're in town, and definitely a second time somewhere around Jennings and Harvard I screwed up. So the count is 2 right now, the number of times I had to backtrack. And now I'm just enjoying a little bit of shade. I remember what I was going to add. Up there by Cuyahoga Heights, there was like a really neat sneaky snake kind of situation going on with the trails, and I don't know if it was intentional or if there was some sort of cause for it, but it was really cool. A little bit of interest to the trail, kind of back and forth. So I liked that. It kind of kept things moving, gave you something different to do and see. There were some divergences and intersections of other trails where they didn't really bother to put up any signage whatsoever, and I felt like maybe they could have slapped a sign somewhere, because I trusted my gut and it has failed me in the past. But I made it to here, so evidently they must loop into each other or something, but it would be nice to have some sort of a confirmation for that rather than just taking your best guess. So if anyone's listening to this who has any sort of power or influence, a sign or two would be cool, because I'm a local in that I'm from Ohio, but I'm not really a local to here. I'm approaching my trip like a local with the eyes of a tourist, like a touristy local. And so I've done portions of this trail, like I've come up this far a couple of times, and these things are really cool. I think there's 2 of them, and I haven't really encountered anything like it on another trail. I'm sure they exist somewhere, but they're really neat, and they're picturesque and quaint, and I thought I'd give a little view of what they're like. Little purpose-built bicycle and pedestrian bridges. I'm not stopping here today, but I wanted to get a quick snap. There's a restaurant that abuts the trail here. It's really neat. You can walk straight up from the trail. They're very bike friendly. They've got bike parking down here, down below, and we've eaten there. I think just once before, but it's a really neat place to stop. It's Independence, I believe, just north of the Rockside Road. We're officially in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, Ohio's only national park. And there was an itty bitty little signpost on one of those wooden, or sign-ons on one of those little wooden posts. I won't even say announcing, showing that I had entered this area, but you can you can see from the change, like the trail composition is much different. The environment is, actually pretty quickly becoming a lot more rural and woodsy and rugged, if you can get past all the cars streaming past to the left of me. But very neat area. I've been through here a number of times, really enjoy it. I'm here at the overpass, and it is sort of a testament to the capability of humankind. It's not necessarily the prettiest thing, and if you've ever seen the New River Gorge Bridge down in West Virginia, it just pales in comparison, but it's still pretty cool. You go under one that says, there's one that I went under already north of here, under 480, and I want to say, well, it doesn't have the arches, so it's not as pretty, and I want to say that this is higher up. And I mean, these support posts, you can see compared to my bike, they're just enormous. So it's kind of a cool little thing. I can't remember if there's another set of these. I think there might be another set further down, like by Boston Mills Brandywine Skiing. But just in case there isn't, I wanted to get a picture. This is a really neat little site along the trail here. there's the Boston store, and look at repurposed old service station. I honestly don't know what the store is here on the old house. General store, something like that. Maybe there'll be some signage, but it's a really neat spot. They've got a place to sit and rest, and I think I'm going to do just that. Okay, when I spoke before and said I thought there was one more overpass, I was wrong. There are two more from where I was. This is the second one, and I think this is the one by Boston Mills Brandywine. And I don't know, I want to say maybe it's the tallest, because it is really, really up there. And I'm in a little bit better spirits now. Got some Mitchell's ice cream at the Boston store trailhead, and it was a fantastic little top off, just what I needed. Now I'm getting into much more familiar territory. Up here is, you know, I've never actually heard the pronunciation. I'm gonna call it Zalays. We're calling it Zalays. It's like the OG farmer's market. It was like a farmer's market before they became cool. It's a hipster. They were doing it first. And I know that they didn't like invent the concept, but this has been up here forever, and it's a really neat place to stop in and get like, what do they have, like roasted corn and pork sandwiches and all kinds of fruit and vegetables and stuff. It's really cool. And now we're into the territory that like I'm pretty comfortably familiar with. I've ridden it a number of times, I mean, quite a few times. And okay, what else was I gonna say? Oh, I am now like 31 miles in, and my legs, and as Forrest Gump would say, my buttocks, are acutely aware of what I'm trying to do to them. So they're making it known. But I got about 30 miles to go. Should be decent. The trail conditions, however, were not so decent. Basically, from Cuyahoga Heights to Peninsula, the trail was crummy and really variable. It wouldn't be so bad if it was the same, but it would go from like chewed up asphalt to real tiny loose stones to huge loose stones. It was like a new challenge every day, or like every, you know, quarter mile. And it's really hard to try to account for what you're trying to do when the conditions change like that. And I guess it keeps you on your toes. Like when I had stick shift cars, I always enjoyed being more in tune with what I was doing. You know, you really had to pay attention. There was one more variable that you had to manage. So maybe I should appreciate that I have to be hyper vigilant and watch the trail terrain, but it wouldn't kill me if we got some smooth, consistent conditions from now on, which, if I recall correctly, is a little bit more what I should expect. I didn't get any kind of picture or video of Peninsula, which would be, I'm heading south. It would have been on my left. That's a really cute little area, but I didn't really have time to stop there. And to my right or west of me would be the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, which is also really neat, and they're not running right now. But they have a program you used to call Bike Aboard, now they call it the Explorer, and for a really small fee, it's like $5 a person, you can bike one direction and then hop on the train and get taken back to where you came from. And that's really neat, and you know, the National Park actually owns and operates it, so that's a really neat thing to do up here. I am at the Mustel store, an old provisions general store, just on the north side of Akron, by the North Side Akron train station for the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad. And I'm stopping because Akron, I think I read or heard something somewhere, means like high point or summit. And there's some elevation getting to and from Akron. And there's a pretty nasty climb up ahead of me. And so I'm taking a little break. And this is a pretty cool scene here. The canal's got some serious drop because of Akron's elevation. So there's a really deep lock here. And you can see the outflow. And it's super cool. Oh yeah, just like Akron is true to its name, or I guess it was named for a reason, Cuyahoga, that's another one I believe I've heard, means like winding river or something like that, or curvy. And if you look at that thing as you're following along, boy, it really is super, super curvy. I had a first, much like Mr. Brooks said, it was bound to happen, but instead of running an 18-wheeler into a motel, I ran my 2-wheeler over a snake. And I appreciate the irony in doing that right after I talked about how vigilantly I was watching the trail conditions. Apparently I was not as observant as I thought I was. It was super, super icky, and I pulled my feet up, and it was traumatizing. I am pretty sure that it was no picnic for the snake either. It was not a good time, would not recommend. So that's all that's interesting that has happened in this stretch. Now I'm gonna go try to fight this big old hill. Has always had, growing up, at least, you know, from what I've heard, living where I live, in a much smaller community, in a much more agricultural county, Akron always had like this poor reputation, and I assume, like any reputation, it's probably rooted in some sort of factual history. And that's sort of the problem with bad reputations, is it's hard to overcome them. And that's a lesson that we can take personally too. You know, it takes a long time to build a reputation and not much time at all to destroy it. So you have to be careful what you do. With that said though, that is one of my favorite parts of the towpath there, what I just saw looking into the stadium. And I think Akron has done a very fantastic job, you know, welcoming this resource and developing this resource and really showcasing what they've got to offer. And we like going, I mean, we've only gone, you know, a handful of times, but we like going to Canal Park and catching the minor league game. I actually enjoy it more than the major league games. The traffic is easier, the concessions are cheaper, the crowds are minimal, it's clean, it's fun. And, you know, this is pretty and this is scenic. And I think that for people who don't know much about Akron, it's definitely worth approaching it with an open mind, I'll say. Now, we're coming up past, I think, part of Goodyear here at some point, and it's very nicely dressed up and well done. So that's actually, I think, a hospital over to my left, but Goodyear has some sort of involvement going on a little further south here, if I recall. So that's something I wanted to showcase. And next neat thing coming up is the Summit Lake Boardwalk. I'm gonna get a little video of that here when I get that way. So this is the Summit Lake Boardwalk, and it's just cool. There have been some other boardwalks that I went over today, and I debated showing them off, but this one is really my favorite because you've got lake on both sides of you, and it's just neat. I can't think of anywhere else that I experienced this on a bike path, and it's pretty unique. Some years back, some kids burnt down, I think, a pretty significant portion of it. there was some debate about whether or not it would even be reopened. And thankfully, they stayed committed to the cause, and they did what they had to do, gathered funds, whatever, and got this thing rebuilt, or whatever of it needed rebuilt. And then taking it even further now, don't quote me as an authority on this. I mean, obviously, like, Google and find your own resources, but there is some sort of a commitment now to develop walking trails, I believe, like around the perimeter. And there's a new bridge here, and on the north side of the lake, there was a new bridge crossing over, and they're pumping some serious money into this to try to revitalize the area and sort of spur some development. So I applaud them for what they're trying to do. And I'm sure there are critics, there are always critics, but there's I'm not going to get the entire thing. There's some kind of quote I really, really like from Roosevelt, and it's not the critic who counts. It's the man whose face is marred by blood and sweat. Essentially, the idea being that, sure, it's very easy to crap all over an idea, but come up with your own. You know, at least they're trying something. So I've still got not quite 20 miles to home, and now I have to remember a much less eloquent saying, and I need to approach this like eating an elephant, just one bite at a time. That's all you do, is just each pedal stroke gets you a little closer to home. I survived day one. I made it back to my house, so that's always a good start. I want to give my, with that day in the books, I'm going to give my little recap here. So what are my takeaways from day one? Well, I think that 60-ish miles is really the appropriate amount for me. I definitely, if I went much longer than that, it would be biting off way more than I can chew. So glad that I stuck with that mileage interval, like, for most days of the trip. What else? My conditioning, I feel like maybe was not as ambitious as it could or should have been. So we're going to see how that works. Today I did not walk any hills, but tomorrow may be a different story. There are a few places where there are comments or about lack of services or lack of poor spacing in between amenities. And I'm going to go ahead and say that today definitely was one of those days. Everything south of Independence, so I started in Cleveland and I'm moving south. Everything south of Independence, or I guess rather the Boston. Boston was like the last real place where I could get provisions. Peninsula, I could have crossed the river on the bridge and went over to Peninsula, and like there's a little restaurant and stuff there. South of that, it was kind of wasteland. And there was really nothing until Akron, and even then, nothing really trail side, like you had to go fetch. So tomorrow is my home turf, and where some people may call it kind of a fueling wasteland of sorts, at least it's my wasteland. So I know where I'm going to stop. I have places in mind where I'm going to go, top off the tank and take good rests. And the hill climbs are, as I've mentioned many, many times, the big concern. But yeah, today, like, I think 61 miles in the books, averaged like 10 miles an hour for my moving speed. Also tomorrow, since I don't have to be taken up to Cleveland, since I get to start right from my home, I can get a much earlier start on the day. So that's going to be nice. So looking forward to seeing what day 2 brings.